Welcome to Pitmaster, an Old Virginia Smoke podcast. I'm your host, Luke Darnell. While you're enjoying this podcast, please share it out on your social media and also be sure to like or follow the podcast on the service of your choice. This interview is with one of our first friends in barbecue, who has become one of our best friends. He's won all over the country and given back to barbecue in more ways than anyone can count. He's also been there for a lot of Old Virginia Smoke's best moments in barbecue, including 2016 World Food Championships, our first GC, when we received our Chicken Team of the Year award in 2017. He's very important to us, so I would like you very much to please welcome Mike Richter from Chick, Swine, and Bovine. All right, so we are here with one of my closest friends in barbecue, one of the people, probably one of the 5 people that I've known longest in barbecue. We are here with Mike Richter from Chick, Swine, and Bovine. How are you?
I'm wonderful, my friend. I'm wonderful.
I don't know if you actually recall the first time that we met, because we didn't really know each other, and I was cooking with a different team, and it was at Bluemont, Virginia. Our team at the time, we didn't go around and talk to anybody, and the pitmaster didn't want anything to do with that. So afternoon after turn-ins, I started walking around just to see all the different smokers and everything, and I came across this giant RV with a kitchen in the back and this beautiful yellow and black pit, and saw this terrifying bald-ass guy back there cleaning, and I asked some dumb question, and you were busy, and you didn't want anything to do with me. But at that time, I didn't know what I was doing. Like, you were working. It was like 1:45. You know, it wasn't free time yet. I always remember that. And then I remember the first time we really hung out was Old Virginia Smoke's first competition in Fredericksburg, Virginia.
There was a lot of bourbon at that contest.
A lot of moonshine, if I recall.
Yeah.
And that's when Mike Palmer came down and grabbed us and drug us up to your rig, and there was a bonfire and bottles of JD Smoking Misfit Shine going around, and we brought the guitars, and that was about where we got going.
It was a good time. It was a good. Was that the year that they had the pool?
No, I think that was the next year was the pool.
Yeah, 'cause I did not go in the pool like some people.
That's one of my favorite stories too. The old man, Travis Bullock, looked at me and yelled at me and said, "Don't you get in that fucking pool?" And I said, "Okay." And as soon as he was out of eyesight, I was in it.
Wow. But we both had a good contest that year too.
I know. I think you won it that year, did you not?
Yeah, and I mean there's, not to get into stories and all that other, but that you were doing so well, and I mean we were having a good contest. I had already won that weekend because Barbara had surprised me, and I was retired, and a lot of the ladies I had worked with had got with Barbara, my work wife, had got with Barbara, and her and some other friends showed up and surprised me.
That's right. I remember that.
So, everything, I was on a high just because I got to see these folks I hadn't seen, in a few years. And they're, your friends are, you've done it when we were in West Virginia at contests, when your family and all your friends are hanging around. All you want to do is hear your name get called at least once because you're feeding them. You want them to say, well, see, it's not bad food. The judges. And, so we're all standing there, and then lo and behold, we got some good calls, and one of which was we had the brisket was the category for the bourbon challenge, and we won brisket, and that was enough to put us just past you, and we won the whole contest. But and that the downside is we beat you. The good side is my friends were all there, so they were even more ecstatic. So for them to be able to be there.
It wasn't a downside. I would have RGC'd to you anytime. That was perfect.
It's one of the good memories. I'm blessed to have so many awesome barbecue memories.
A lot of Old Virginia smokes high points in barbecue you have been present for. I actually, it's pretty much all of the top ones, pretty much. Like,
Well, we spent a lot of time together at contests, and we both traveled for contests.
yeah,
That's.
yeah,
I mean, think about it, how things had changed when we started, 20 years ago. There was one contest in Maryland.
yeah.
I remember Bill Small started his contest, and there was a license contest the first year. Now we got lucky enough to win that. We were cooking on a Lang back then. You had to drive to go to cook a contest. So, I mean, everybody's a lot more fortunate for the most part now that, they can do a contest within a couple hours most weekends.
Well, I think we're back to one contest in Maryland now. I think Bel Air is now, might be the only contest in Maryland this year.
Do you think that was because of the virus?
It's a combination of things, I think. Mostly to do with COVID, because I think people found during that year where nobody really cooked. I mean, there were contests if you wanted to go, but I think people found other things to do and said, "Hey, this driving all over the country and cooking barbecue." There's a lot of different contributing factors to it, but you mentioned one thing there, that you guys traveled for contests, and that's one of the things that Kim and I picked up from you and Barbara is like that's fun to get out there and to meet new people. Barbara and I made so many friends, in so many different states, and it's, I guess, humble brag, whatever you want to call it. One of the, we got lucky, and we won some contests, but we were able to win in 10 different states. Now that's probably what I'm happiest about, is that in those states we've cooked in more than once. So we've met people in all these states, and it's before Facebook. You were making friends at these places, and you had to call them and stuff because you had your phone. But that was, there are so many really good people in barbecue that it got to be, the contest became secondary, and Thursdays and Saturdays were what it was about for us. And I mean, we were fortunate to be retired and we could go do that, Right. And that's another thing. Like, I could spend this whole podcast talking about the things that you've taught me. And that's a legitimate, when I think about my mentors in barbecue, you're right there near the top of the list. I mean, but yeah, that was one of the things that you taught us on was, you make the time. You go there on Thursday, you stay Saturday night. And it's one thing that Kim and I have tried to continue to do as much as we can. That's where you can really make some nice bonds and make some nice friends. And like you guys, we've got friends all over the country, and we're truly blessed because of it.
It's probably the best thing out of the whole thing. That and learning to cook better. I mean,
right.
I've gotten better, since we started, and not only necessarily in barbecue, but the meals that you have and stuff when you're laughing and carrying on and trying different things. And, it's awesome. I've always enjoyed it.
Yes. And that's another great point. Learning how to cook. I just went to try and look you up on barbecue data. I got to do I'll get Mark Kenny to fix all this. Your stats are spread out of so many different spellings of chick, swine, and bovine in there. I'll get that fixed up. But yeah, you made winning in that many states, I used to know, I think Kim and I might be right around 10. And that's something that we pride ourselves on too, is that, we're not just good in one part of the country, nor do we want to be. we just want to go everywhere and meet as many people and have as much fun as we can.
Right. And back in the day when we were doing classes and all that stuff, they said, well, do you change? And, no, I don't change. I would say, like Tuffy talk, good food's going to be okay, no matter where you are. And
right.
It's, cook it right and it should be okay unless you light them up with a bunch of hot sauce or something.
You mentioned earlier that your work wife and Barbara set up some stuff. How has your career and life experiences outside of barbecue prepared you to be a better pitmaster on the competition barbecue trail?
Oh, that's a interesting question. But I guess at work wise, I was always I spent most of my time in a supervisory role, so I was pointing. Okay, this we need to get done. This needs to get done. This needs to get done. And I was a little anal retentive about making sure everything was done the way that I wanted it done when, I was working. Well, when it came to barbecue, it was just me. So I was pretty anal retentive about this is how this is where the wood goes. This is where the meat goes. This is where the pork. This is where the beef. Everything goes in its place at this time to get. And then I would say now I'm not quite as bad because now I'm having more fun when we go. It's not. I don't have that pressure. If you're out there chasing team of the year and all that stuff, you're adding stress to your life, and I don't want it anymore. So.
I don't want it anymore. And you were in the corrections, system, correct? Yeah.
I'm just under 28 years.
Wow, I remember when speaking of all the great times you've been around when Kim and I have done cool stuff, and you cooked with us in the final of the World Food Championships.
Oh, that was fun.
That was such a great time, and you were so amazing that weekend, and you stayed and helped us cook against all of those amazing chefs from every different industry. And I remember we were wrapping. Well, first thing I remember is I had to go do an interview, and I came back in the trailer, and you and Kim had arranged everything. You had taped the carpet down so that it wouldn't come up, and I was like, "What happened?" And this an OCD bomb went off in this trailer.
The little general and I got along really well, getting it all the way we wanted it and she wanted it.
I remember, and then we wrapped the ribs, and I put the brown sugar down, and you had this look like I had punched a dog. You were like, "Are you just going to put that sugar down there all willy-nilly like that?" I'll never forget that. That was
I was a little anal, but one of the things I remember there that I laughed about and told Barbara, and you were temping your ribs.
Yeah.
Remember, you said what? Ask me, and I said, "Well, I need a toothpick."
Yep.
Because I was more of a feel person than a temp, but I know I talked to one or two other people, and they said the same thing. Well, I've always temped, and it like you, some very good cooks, very good rib cooks. And I said, well, everybody does what they like and what works for them. My niece is really big. Her saying the last year has been, "You do you." So that right. I'm trying to adopt that.
And that's a good point. You do you, but that's also one of the best things about barbecue is that there's 1,000 different ways to skin this cat, and that's what makes it fun.
It is. And we both have a really good friend in Donnie Teal.
Yep.
And, Donnie is the master of making good food and bringing bare minimum to make it happen, including product, and still going out there and beating people,
Yeah, he's the podcast I did with him. That's one. You led on earlier that you haven't listened to any podcasts earlier.
Yeah. I gotta get in the 21st century.
But I highly recommend the Donnie Teal podcast. There's a lot of learning in there, mostly about what not to eat at truck stops. But
where you have to drive a little way and you have to stop and get rid of it real quick.
No, it's just, I don't know if you've ever had a Tijuana Mama, but man, he made me buy one, and I did, and I regretted it like a half an hour later.
Oh,
Pickled sausage or something. It's ugh. One of the things that always happens on this podcast is we love talking about successes and stuff. But one of the things I like to talk about is a failure during a contest. Do you have a favorite failure of yours that sets you up for success later?
I would say there were times that before I got really good about making lists for the contest, and Barbara is the list queen. I was never a list person. So I may have more than once forgot things, and if that, I'll remember it next time. So I've made lists. As far as failures, I mean, I've had, I went and bought meat early for the Royal one year, and I didn't freeze it. And I had 2 good calls in chicken and beef. And I had people coming up and pat me on the back and everything else. And I said, no, the pork was bad. And they said, what do you mean? I said, I spit it out. It was bad. I still turned it in, which was, but you never know what could happen. But it was just the ribs and the pork was bad. And one of our friends who was sponsored by this butcher shop at the time in Virginia felt real bad and gave me some product. I mean, because it scored like it should have. It was horrible. So it cost us really bad. So I became even more anal about my product after that. And I don't say bad as a learning experience, but one of the somewhere along the line, well, I'm sure we'll talk about special people that we've met. Dylan is definitely one of the most special people that we've had the pleasure to meet. Chris Owen and I and Barbara, we were at, oh my goodness, where was it? It was in Pennsylvania at a contest. And Dylan's sitting with us, and Dylan got a little spoiled. Dylan got to go to the stage a lot. And he was young at this time. And we're sitting there, and we're not hearing our name called. And he's kind of sitting lower and lower in his chair. And we're cheering. We're clapping. We're doing what we do because, our barbecue friends are our friends. And finally, he said, I don't understand why you guys are happy. And I said, Chris and I are like, what do you mean? He goes, well, we haven't got any calls and the food was good. I said, well, it's, that happens. I said, but Jack and Jenny are having a really good contest. And he goes, yeah. And then we did end up getting a call. So he got to go to the stage. So he felt a little bit better. But then Jack and Jenny won the contest. And Dylan said, well, you would have thought you guys would have won. I said, it's awesome. We love these people. They are awesome. And, and that was Black Cat Barbecue back in the day anyway. But for them to win, it was, we see you guys win. We see our friends win. It's like winning ourselves, especially when, they're genuinely happy.
Absolutely.
It's so that was a big experience for Dylan. And after that, he was more about, hey, yeah, well, that's so-and-so, A lot of those people there at that contest had given him T-shirts. I think, I forget who it was. It might have been Chris Hall had arranged to go around, and a lot of those different teams had brought T-shirts to give him. So then, his heart swelled, and so as everybody else. And then I think that was a big day for him going forward, to where then he was always making sure he was clapping real loud and cheering. So
always teaching, Uncle Mike, always teaching.
I don't know about that, but he's a special kid.
Well, I mean, that's, we had no idea what we were doing when we first got started. And, we took a lot of cues from you guys, and how to be and how to win, how to lose. There's a lot of different aspects to competition barbecue that, that people don't think about. And one of those things is stuff that comes out of competition barbecue, both for us personally and professionally. What's been the most surprising thing to come out of competition barbecue for you?
Surprising or best thing that came up?
It can be either.
I go back to the friendships. Some of them that, to this day, and we're not competing much. We're probably do Hammond. The local Pensacola contest is probably off the books. So I'm more involved with OBR now. So, in which it's just priorities kind of change, but the friendships that we've made and continue, even with other people that don't compete anymore. Mm-hmm. I would the Swifts from Wild Bunch Butt Burner, Mo and Susie from Big Mo from Aho, Mike and Debbie from Laudable. There's a lot of teams that don't cook anymore that we became friends with, that we're still in contact with through good and bad. We've been friends through a lot of stuff, and that's not counting all the people that are still cooking barbecue that are just awesome people. And some people have left. Some people come. Jeremy Moyers, had moved and kind of got out of it for a while. He's coming back in. I mean, I remember the first time he won a contest. I mean, it's just, there's so many friendships that we made that are important to us.
Right. But you mentioned OBR as well, and that's something that you're very heavily involved with.
Passionate, I would say, is a good word about it. It did contribute to my cutting back on contests, just because I love what they do. There's no drama. If it is, it's not like anything than the other stuff. It's everybody's there to help somebody, and whether it's in a disaster situation or if it's in one of our always serving projects where whether we're feeding homeless, the vets, or whatever the case may be, everybody's there to try to help somebody, and there's a lot of giving people in the world, and it's nice to be around so many people that will do that.
Yeah. And that's why we do it, and it's really cool. I see all the time, all the travel and everything, that not just yourself, but everybody that's involved with it, that you guys spend in doing that. And that's something that didn't exist when we started doing barbecue, and now it does. And now it has a very large presence. So that's been great to watch.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy it's gone to where with the Always Serving Project and just with the storms. I mean, heck, we just did 75,000 meals in Mayfield, Kentucky in December because of tornadoes. I mean, that December tornadoes are not real common. It's not the months that you normally think of. We just had tornadoes in Florida over the weekend. The weather's, it is what it is. I believe comes in cycles. But in addition, we've got, hopefully now with the world trying to get back to normal, we'll be able to go back to barbecue basics and doing more of our days of giving, to where we go out and spread the word. And one of the good things that happens when we do that, we get more volunteers. They find out about us, and the next time there's a disaster, maybe they're able to come help.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We've talked a lot about people in our conversation. Who has impacted your life the most in competition barbecue?
Wow. Wow. It's kind of weird. Barbara gets credit for getting me more organized. As far as cooking and everything, I'd have to go with the professor and say Tuffy. Just from way back in the day, we had a lot of conversations while, just sitting on Friday nights.
Yeah.
When after I quit spending so much time enjoying some of the team's participation with tasty beverages, and it for me, it doesn't work that way for everybody, but for me, if Friday night, if I'm over participating, my food represents that, and we don't normally do quite as well. But just having the conversations, discussing food in general as well as barbecue, the Mike Davis,
mm-hmm.
And then once again, that goes back to Tuffy. Tuffy pushed me to take a class, and way back when, really the classes that were available was Mike. Mike and Debbie started doing classes, so we took their class, and then became. I went to a contest in Shelby for the sole purpose of meeting Mike and Debbie. Now, he was staying in his camper. Debbie was out doing the stuff. I came by after the contest. I went over, and Debbie said something to him, and he left the group of people he was talking to and came over and spent like 30 minutes talking to me. And said, sorry, I was sleeping when you came by and all, but we talked, we had a great time. We became friends after that, but talking about making new friends. And once again, I was dragging my Lang 84 at that time down the road with the sides. So I caught a lot of wind. But I met Mo and Susie there from Big Mo. That was in North Carolina, and that was my first trip there. But I was welcomed by these people, and I was cooking solo, and you need anything we can do to help you. And I didn't know them from Adam, but yet they were having fun. I know I knew they were fun people, and that was people to be around. And thank goodness I met them, because we're friends to this day. So
absolutely. And gosh, Mike is somebody I should probably have on this podcast. His name's been brought up a lot of times.
Well, back, we talk about OGs, whether it's him and Johnny, I'm not going to get into all that other bull, but, they traveled and were next to each other for a lot of years. There's a lot of people I'm sure you've talked to that were on there that were out. I wasn't going out. I did finally go to Oklahoma and cook with a lot of friends out there. I was blessed that David Buska befriended me early on, and I'll put in a shameless plug, even though I'm not cooking. Trust your butcher. We won a lot of contests using his stuff. But those are just the people that you meet out there. A quick story. I'll do it, but just because we lost him, Rob McGee.
Oh yeah.
Traveling the country, meeting people, and Rob was one of those people that I was fortunate to meet. And for whatever reason, when we met the first time, we became friends. That's back mention hogs on the Hilton Times, years ago. The last time he was team of the year, we were chasing him. So, and those that are chasing, you put in a lot of miles, you put in a lot of contests. We're at a contest, and I walk over by him. We may have shared a couple dozen handles of Dewar's in our friendship. Handles. I'm not misspeaking there. And he came by and he said, "So what? We're talking." He goes, "What the hell's happened to you?" I said, "I can't get a chicken call to save my soul." And I had been a pretty good chicken cook for a few years. And of course, there's people around, and there's always ears, the shigging joke, and all the other. So he says, "Well, let's go for a walk." So Rob and I take off walking. We're talking to people. We end up over at my site, and it's just he and I. He says, "So tell me how you're cooking your chicken, where you're cooking it, how you're cooking it, everything else." So I laid it out to him. He goes, "Okay, here's what I want you to try." And he ran something totally different than what I was doing. Now, keep in mind, of course, this was later in the year, but I wasn't going to catch him at that time, but I was close. But here's a guy that's literally giving me, in return, my chicken back to where I was top 10 again, in KCBS top 10. And I totally changed how I was cooking my chicken on my Jambo. And those are the people that you meet in barbecue, and the people that have had an impact on me, whether it's competition or just life-wise, and let alone going into his restaurant. We went out to Kansas City early for one of the banquets. This is before he was still working at the Hilton. And Wednesday before the banquet, Wednesday and Thursday, we drove around Kansas City looking at possible restaurants. And we started about noon and drank Dewar's until about 9 and looked at different places. And just that he knew were for sale, and we're picking them apart, and he knows more about the location, of course, than I did, not living there, but just on the different things. But and there's so many, he's, because we just lost him, I had to make sure I mentioned just how wonderful he is, as well as a lot of the other good people in barbecue.
I didn't even remember this until you just brought it up, but you introduced me to Rob.
Oh, okay.
You guys took me to dinner there. I think our second, maybe our first Royal, maybe our second Royal. And you introduced me to Rob, and I would continue to go to Q39 whenever I would get to town. And one year I went, and I went to the older one, and the Royals were playing in the playoffs. So I sat at the bar, and I got the smoked fried chicken in the first inning and sat there and kept watching the game. And baseball, it takes forever. So by the 8th inning, he's like, "Last call for food." And I was like, "Well, I better get the burnt-end burger before I leave." So I got that, and he'd remembered me, and we'd been talking. He's like, "Okay, restaurant's closed. Everybody's out." And he looks at the three of us at the bar. He goes, "Except for you three." And he goes, "We're riding this game out." And I was like, "Okay." And so we sat there and we watched the whole game. It went into extra innings, and we're drinking. Royals won. And I was like, "Okay, cool." And I was like, "I'm going to take off." And he's like, "You're not driving." I was like, "I didn't drive here. I walked." We were staying pretty close to there. "Absolutely not. You're not doing that." And he threw me in his truck and drove me 4 blocks down the road. And yeah, that was a great loss for the barbecue community.
Oh my goodness.
Unbelievable person.
No, and once again, one of the people with really big hearts that would do whatever he could to help people.
Yep. Yep, and he was on my list of people to interview on this. And that's as we get older and older, I think part of the reason for doing this is to catalog our stories and catalog our memories and have a record of it. Have a record of all the great people and great things they've done. I think it's super important and something that barbecue really needs.
I like that idea. I mean, I agree, because we've lost a lot of people that started things before we, got involved that have, and then the last recent years we've had several that, and we're unfortunate there's going to be more, because there's a lot of good people that are, I'm not old, but they're older than me. And, and everybody has health issues. God forbid there's accidents and all kinds of things that happen, that's a good thing. And to be able to have that to where, somebody Google somebody or something, that would have been great to have for Rob or something like that.
Yeah.
Let alone for their kids or his grandkids someday to look up. That would have been pretty cool.
Absolutely. Well, one thing has become evident during this podcast is that we're going to have to do a second part of this sometime down the road, because I've asked you about 4 of my 30 questions that I wanted to ask you. But I knew that was going to happen because, like I stated earlier, we have so much history and have done so much together and, been there, together for a lot of cool stuff. And I do have to ask this one before we get into the rapid fire, though, because I'm just dying. This is what I've been dying to ask you. What habits, rituals, or routines do you have for yourself during your competition?
First and foremost is no matter where I was, I called and talked to my mom on Friday nights beforehand, and I would, tell her where we were and, go over, what it was, how I thought the meats looked, whether or not, where we were, what the weather was and all that. And I talked to her about that. I pretty much always, with the exception of that one we did in Richmond, the Recovery Fest, always had a beer with me at the judges' cooks meeting, whether it was in a red Solo cup or a koozie or just in its container. For some reason, I've turned around and gone back to get that if I forgot that. Would have a beer with me. Even when I was trying to take breaks from not drinking so much, I would always make sure I had a beer there. And I guess for good karma or whatever, I always wanted to make sure that I congratulated who won, because I was fortunate when we did. We had a lot of people who were always really nice to us, but you don't win every time, and unless you're the GOAT. And I remember one year it was like every 3 contests he was winning. So, but even then, you still want to congratulate, because you don't know when it's going to change on you or whatever. But I think the beer was, I would turn around and go do that. And trying to make myself go to sleep so that I could be awake in the morning. I mean, when I started, I was lighting and putting pork on at midnight, on the lang, And then I'd wait a while. Then the brisket went on, and I'm getting it off. And that 84, I had all the room in the world, but I was like trying to cook this here, this there, and so sleep became important to me. So then once I got to the Jambo and I started putting on, I was still putting things on when there were a lot of folks that were getting up, lighting their fires at 4 and 5. And trimming smaller and everything else. I'm still cooking the whole great big old monster piece of meat and stuff. So I told myself if I got to sleep, if I could get, 4 hours, I was going to be okay the next day. And I was getting up a lot of times at 3 to light the fire. And that's before the little mezzanine things and everybody got started going with the baskets and all that. I don't know why we didn't think of that 10 years, 15 years before they did. But, and one of the fun things, talking about the 84, I would light it with my weed burner. And if anybody was asleep, they woke up because it sounded like a plane taking off because I put it down the chamber to warm the chamber up first. And that weed eater on high. So paybacks for everybody carrying on while I was trying to go to sleep.
That's right. Gosh, you also always had the bandana on.
Well, yeah, I see that was second nature. But that's because when you're bald, I know bald's beautiful, but I'm still going. I'm getting ready to go through another treatment for all the years of not covering my head. So,
yeah.
But that keeps the sweat out. But I would say, most of the time it was ever my red chili peppers or my red, white, and blue. That was pretty much.
Yep.
Barbara always made sure those were in the coach, so I didn't have to worry about forgetting those.
That's Kim. Make sure that my blue ones are in there because I don't know what it is, but I have to have it when I'm cooking. And I may not put it on until halfway through the cook, but I got to have it. And, yeah. Oh, man. Yeah, we're definitely going to have to do a part 2 later this year because I barely scratched the surface with you, Uncle Mike.
Yeah. And it's been all good. We haven't got into anything crazy. So
there's the rapid fire questions. We got to get those in. These are my favorites, by the way.
Okay.
So what do you see about barbecue on social media that upsets or bothers you?
And I'm not going to delve off into it, but accusations that are out there of things that may or may not have occurred. Actually, accusations saying things did occur when I was on the board. All anybody had to ever do was call and ask. But I'm not going to go out on social media and spread all that stuff. Social media to me is to wish people good and bless them if something horrible's happened in their lives.
Yep.
There's still the battle, and I don't know what's going to happen between the cooks and the judges. You get in there where they've, it did morph into a really high scoring things. I remember when I started, 180 was like non-existent.
Right.
And now they award them each week, on who got 180s over the weekend. And I'm not saying anything bad, but I know the first time we got a perfect at Sam's. And once again, that's all master judges. And that's probably, maybe judges that were on the high score of things, but it was really special. I mean, we were pretty happy about it.
I think a lot of that still, though, Mike, is still regional. I really still do. I mean, cooking in the Mid-Atlantic
versus others.
Others, it's a ball breaker, man.
I told somebody and was called, and they told me bullshit. I said, I've won contests in with 660s,
Yeah, I RGC'd Lake Placid one year with a 639 and lost by a point.
Yeah, they said, well, no, that's just wrong. I said, no, that's just the way it is. But if it's consistent all the way across the board, that's one of the things Mark Gibbs' scoring system was trying to do. If everybody scores everybody the same way, then it's fair.
Right.
If everybody's getting these scores, if this judge is giving 6, 7, 8s to everybody, and so are the other people, then it's a level playing field. If they, for whatever reason, thought that you only get a 9, by God, if it's making me wet myself, that's just the way it is. But I mean, when we went to the first couple trips down to the South, it was crazy. I forget where we were. Floyd, West Virginia. We won the contest, and everybody was saying, "Did you see your score?" I said, "No," but I said, "We won. You almost got a 700." And that was Chris Capel brought that to me.
Yeah.
And I said, "No way." I said, "No way," because I mean, in our area, a 680 was a huge score.
Oh, you'd win more times than you lost, right?
Yeah. That was what struck Chris Capel was that. So we laughed about that night. Once again, that's a Saturday night enjoying it with friends.
Yep.
But I should have mentioned Chris when we were talking about people.
Oh yeah.
Next time on the call, because I got stories of Chris that were awesome.
Oh, he's still one of my closest friends and still one of my mentors. He's just a great guy.
My phone will ring and it'll be Chris, and I'll answer, "Cheers, buddy. What's up?"
All right. Do you have a favorite pre, during, or post competition meal?
It'd be easier to say which contest had the best food, I think, sometimes. I kind of, and I'll blame Donnie for it. I got into the fish tacos thinking that it was bringing me luck after messing with Donnie. But at different contests, there were different food. Depends on the parts of the country on what you try to eat. Because once again, we traveled.
Right.
So if we're in Hammond, I'm eating oysters.
That's right.
We're going to Chukie's or somewhere and eating good.
That's cool. That's a great way to do it. Do you have a favorite present that you like to give to people?
Not really. I don't know that I consider it a present, but there are folks even to this day that are not comfortable with it. But I'm a big hugger.
Oh yeah.
I think that's I don't hug everybody, but I hug a lot of people, and I guess that's just trying to give a little bit of me and pushing through, I guess, through them or whatever. I'm not
That's not as controversial as sending people underwear like I do.
Yeah, that's a little different. Yeah. Especially if they're dirty, you got to at least wash them.
No, they're brand new, of course. All right, last one. If you could have a gigantic billboard anywhere with anything on it, getting a message out to millions of people, what would it say and why?
Turn off the news, go out and meet people. Smile at people. There are a lot of good people in this world. Don't believe what you hear. Just go talk and spend a minute talking to somebody. And there are a lot of really good people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Mike, I want to thank you so much for being on here. People still find you online? Where can they find you at?
I'm on Facebook. That's about all I'm doing. We closed the website and all that.
Okay. But we're going to start listening to podcasts, right?
We're going to start listening, and I'm going to go back and listen to the one on from Donnie.
Oh, both the Donnie podcasts, Donnie Teal and Donnie Bray, are two of my favorites. Just because they both mean a lot to me in different ways. So each conversation is pretty different but a lot of fun. Either way, just like this one was. This is one of my favorite podcasts of all time. I can tell you that.
Well, that's awful nice of you.
And we're going to have to do it again because, again, I have like 20 more questions I need to ask you. All right, Mike, we'll see you soon. Thank you for listening to Pitmaster, an Old Virginia Smoke podcast. Be sure to subscribe and like the podcast, rate the podcast, and to share it out with all your friends. Also, be sure to check out the Old Virginia Smoke YouTube channel as well. Tune in next week for another great episode of Pitmaster. For companies interested in advertising, please contact Old Virginia Smoke directly via www.oldvirginiasmoke.com. Pitmaster, an Old Virginia Smoke podcast, is edited by Chris Sedanka. Pitmaster, an Old Virginia Smoke podcast, is a property of Old Virginia Smoke, LLC. All rights reserved. Copyright 2022.